This is Real Talk with Leigh Brown. Today I'm bringing you not one, but two guests. I've got Hamp Thomas and Bill Whitaker to talk about one of the intricate details in a real estate transaction, which happens to be the measure and the square footage of a house, because it's got really big ramifications, not just right now, but going into the future. This is also pretty applicable to anybody whose profession is undergoing massive change. So strap in, enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. Well, Bill, my viewers and my listeners know who you are, but give them the second introduction to Bill. And by the way, if you're thinking he looks familiar, you can click over here to watch the first episode where Bill joined me on the show. And after you reintroduce yourself, Bill, we'll bring Hamp into the mix, and then we'll start chatting a little bit.
Okay. All right. So I'm Bill Whitaker. I am a realtor, just like you are, most people out there, North Carolina, South Carolina. But I am the owner of Raw Tape Real Estate Measuring and Photography here in Little River, South Carolina.
And as we like to reference, Little River is the rough edge of South Carolina.
Sub Carolina, as Leigh likes to say.
Look, I just learned that from my favorite Facebook page, which is The State You're In. They're hilarious. And they've been in a war with West Virginia here lately. It's just a whole thing going on. So we've give up on Sub Carolina. We got to focus on West Virginia now.
Okay.
It's beautiful where he lives. His house is great, and he took us on the golf cart tour around there.
Oh.
It's
you got
really
special
nice.
treatment, did you?
Yeah, he came down. We did some video on the water. You'll get to see all that later. But I took him down here to crab catchers where all the boats are going by. So we were doing video for an upcoming class, and the boats were coming by and all that. And then I just took him around and showed him around and stuff while he was down here. I'm getting ready to go see him on Friday. So we're going to do some more video stuff there at his house this time.
Exactly.
I mean, Crab Catchers used to be our favorite seafood restaurant until they renovated it and upgraded it a little bit too much. So hopefully they'll stay cool there, though.
It's not fancy. I mean, it's still, I guess, you just sit out there in the back, but it's not that fancy.
Fancier than it was, Bill. I guess it's all in relative terms. Hamp, what did you think of Crab Catchers?
Well, it looked pretty new to me. I don't know. I don't remember it from before, but it looked pretty nice.
Are you an old Calabash man yourself? You didn't have to go down a Little River?
Yeah. Every year, like 30 relatives actually liked each other enough to go down there and spend a week. So we went to Calabash a lot.
Well, it used to be the seafood capital, but so many of our great seafood restaurants, the owners have retired and the kids didn't want it. And so now you've got a string of thrift shops. It's a little depressing down through Calabash compared to what it was 40 years ago.
There's still some good places.
Like where I live, Leigh, I love Pinehurst and Southern Pines and Whispering Pines, but we've got so many people moving in now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's almost like we're losing the small town that we've always had in the traffic.
Well, we'll talk about that for sure, but I think we got to tell our audience who Hamp Thomas is. So, by the way, y'all, Hamp and I are not kin that we know of, even though Thomas is my maiden name, but it's entirely possible that somewhere in the family tree.
You never know.
But I'm Hamp Thomas, and I live in the big town of Whispering Pines, North Carolina, and I'm about 5 miles from Pinehurst in North Carolina. And I am a realtor and an appraiser, and I've been doing this a long time and accidentally fell into square footage, and that's how Bill and I came to be. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Hamp is my mentor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yay.
Bill was actually teaching people how to measure square footage in person and doing that, and he took a program of mine called Home Measurement Specialist. So we've been friends for a while now.
But, they don't really build a house with a cantilever anymore like they used to, Hamp. That was, for me, the hardest thing to measure on a house that my daddy just about threw his hands up trying to teach me.
Yeah. Well, the new stuff is making it so easy. This LiDAR technology, it's going to change everything in the next 5 years, is what I hope.
Well.
And I've talked bad about it. I have a lot of YouTube videos, and I talked bad about LiDAR. So now I'm eating my words.
Well, tell us what LiDAR stands for the non-initiated in the audience.
Oh gosh, and if you hadn't asked me, I could probably tell you.
Let me help you out, Hamp. It's
All right,
light detection and ranging. So LiDAR is basically the same thing as radar, but it's a lot quicker, and the signals are a lot more. Like with LiDAR, when you shoot it, it's like millions of laser lights. The sensors go out. With radar, it's different. It goes out and bounces off and comes back. But LiDAR is a lot quicker. Radar works. Yeah, it's like But radar works better in the weather. LiDAR has its issues when it's bad weather, whatever. But we're inside the house using it, and but LiDAR has been around for years, but now some companies have picked it up and using it.
Is it related to this, to the Measure app? Is that what we're talking about? Like
yes. So
it's an app, yeah. But
right. So you actually have a technology on your phone. LiDAR is only available on the iPhone 12 to 16 Pro or Pro Max. It is the only ones that use it. Not the Android used to use it years ago. They no longer use it. So when I teach the program, is that I say, you need to use an iPhone. I was an Android guy for years. I had to get into iPhone now because it has LiDAR. And when I use the app to do my measurement, then to do all the floor plans and everything, you have to have the 12 Pro or 12 Max to do it. So the LiDAR has been around for years. They use it for all kinds of stuff, for surveying cars or automobiles. I mean, Musk bought a hoop of stuff, technology LiDAR. But what I understand too is in a few years, Hamp, that the 4D imaging radar stuff is actually going to overtake. They've got this new technology now. Within a few years, they're talking about LiDAR is good, but they're working on all this new stuff that's going to be even better than LiDAR. But right now, we talk about it with using an app to measure houses, to get accurate measurements, to make it easier for agents to stay out of real estate jail and all that. So, but Hamp, you want to talk about the course or?
Well, let me just say that Bill, I have taught ANSI for a long time, and luckily I had an ANSI class when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac mandated it. So that was good timing. But Bill, the company called Cuba Casa, we don't work for Cuba Casa, no affiliation. Mm-hmm. But Bill has been working with them about 7 years, trying to help them get more ANSI compliant. So they have really made an effort to make the measurements, a lot better. Because when I first started checking them, I would do lots of houses and compare my little laser tape and an old tape measure and then the LiDAR. And that would be off a lot. And now they're really close, within 9 or 10 square feet a lot on a big house. Mm-hmm. And it's so much better than tax records, if nothing else. Tax records, I won't get started on that, but it's not.
It is a good time to remind the audience that in North Carolina, the realtor who lists a house is responsible for the reported size of that house, that square footage. And so a realtor from the beginning is supposed to, or a licensee even, is supposed to know how to measure property. A lot of realtors, because math might not be their number one skill, have long hired out appraisers to come in and measure a house so that they have a good representation, because to Hamp's point, the tax records are a rough estimation. They have nothing to do with the actual number. And if you want to know why, it's because the original builder would have turned in the blueprints and the floor plan to the tax office, but the builder and the homeowner may have added this and taken this out and then adjusted based on the lot. And so it's just not accurate in so many scenarios. So the responsibility falls on the licensee, and your state may be different. So if you're watching this from a different state, you can always confirm who is responsible for the reported heated living area of a house, which we all call square footage. Yeah. So when you mention ANSI though, Hamp, remember we got a lot of people in the audience that aren't in real estate. They're just fascinated by it. What does ANSI stand for?
Well, the American National Standards Institute. I got that one, Bill.
You got that one. There we go.
The funny thing is, when I ask people, well, who owns ANSI? And actually, it's the National Home Builders Association.
Really? Oh, I would have
And
guessed it was Fannie or Freddie. So it's the home builders that own the ANSI?
yep, and they
Huh.
make a lot of money off of ANSI. But that's why I'm so happy. This North Carolina book, you can get it for free online, or you might can buy a copy of this for $1 now. I give out a lot of these, but in my opinion, my personal opinion, this is better than ANSI. It has more it covers more measurements than ANSI does. I always tell people, use this book and make a disclaimer. Let me do a disclaimer first off, that when people measure square footage, I can take you in 3 houses, all totally different sizes, and it doesn't matter to the buyer what size they are.
Correct.
But before that house closes, they're going to figure price per square foot somewhere along the way, and then the size is going to matter.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because prior to Zillow becoming the #1 real estate website, nobody talked about dollars per square like they do now. They act like it is the be all end all, but you're exactly right. If somebody buys a 1994 house when we had the all the way open floor plans where you walk in and it's one giant room, maybe with a kitchen bar in the middle, that's maybe good for some people, but others it's not usable at all because they need wall space. In a 1978 house, everything's got its own little boxy walls. They feel completely different, and they even feel different to different people based on whether or not they have big case goods or art to hang on the wall. And so it is so subjective, and I wish more agents would talk people through that and help them understand that we should go take a look at it just in case that layout works for you, regardless of what the number on the paper says.
That's a good thing for having floor plans online.
Oh,
Buyers
yes.
love that stuff. They're going to spend more time at that listing or that website than the one that doesn't have it anyway.
Oh,
Can
I
I
agree,
say
because
that from
it's a time
Zillow one
savings.
second? Can I say something about Zillow?
You can.
I hope it won't be bad. But because
But
Zillow,
it just has to be truthful, Hamp. We can
I'll
just
say
tell the
that.
truth, that's all.
Okay. Does Zillow pay MLS anything?
Well, in the markets where they are a subscriber member, they do, because Zillow did get their brokerage set up and they're members of the National Association. So many of the markets, they do have a subscriber membership, but I think it depends on where the market is located.
And if they do that, they pay the same fee as a realtor, right?
That's correct. I pay the same thing that you pay. Well, actually, I might pay more because I'm the broker. I pay more than my agents do, but there has to be a subscriber for an agent to get in.
All right. While we're talking about square footage, what would happen if the Realtor.com was the only source of square footage information? Realtors pay a lot of money to Zillow. And I'm sorry, I'm not a big fan of Zillow, you can tell. But I'm thinking, why are we paying all this money to Zillow and we're giving them the information they use for free? It costs money and time to get that information. And if we just kept only the square footage information, it would shut down all the other websites overnight, because that's what they want, is the square footage. But MLS, Realtor.com, whoever, if they had that one piece of information, they would control the internet and real estate information. That's big data, that information.
Well, you could also look at how they've done it in the Atlanta, Georgia market, where they don't report square footage at all from a liability standpoint. And the agents there, I know that the first time I found out about it, I'm thinking, how do you evaluate a house? Because I'm so used to having it. But then they said, to your earlier point, if you take the square footage out of the equation, buyers have their mind opened up a little bit to different properties. And so just taking aside what the data is used for, maybe it's just better for the consumer if that's not necessarily hidden, but just unreported, so that they will take a look at properties.
But you know where they're going to go look? They're going to go look at Zillow or Homes.com or something, and they're going to see a square footage number. When people's mind, if they see a sign, they're going by a billboard and it says price per square foot, like it or not, everybody knows what that means and they're used to looking at that information. I wish it would go away. When I would go and talk to realtors, I have my picture with my little helmet under my arm. And people, if you get realtors and appraisers together and you talk about square footage, everybody has strong opinions about square footage. And I would not be a very likable person in some of those. They would tell me, we don't use price per square foot. I guarantee you, we do it the right way. And before the end of the class, I would say, can I see 3 listing folders? What do you think's in those folders? Price per square foot. And it's kind of hard to argue with that. So it's not the end all be all, but they still use it as some metric, to come up with a value. It's embedded in our brains. We've been taught that forever.
Well, we have to retrain because those of us that are old enough to remember the world before the internet need to make sure we're educating the young ones. And when I try to explain dollars per square foot and you're talking about the measure piece, all you have to bring into the equation is a garage because that's unheated living area and it's not part of the square footage of a house. So if you have house A sitting beside house B and this one's got a garage and this one doesn't, the one with the garage is going to bring more money. So that changes the dollars per square foot based on something that isn't a square footage item. And as soon as they grasp that, they start thinking through it. But this falls on the licensing bodies to start educating better, and especially our broker community has got to explain this to agents, and then they can educate the public. But right now, you're right. You're addicted to that one metric.
But why is it that pre-licensing does not have a class on square footage and selecting comps? I love RPR, but when RPR picks comps, if you don't set it like it should be, it's going to give you 50 houses and average the price per square foot. It can be a townhome. It can have a basement. It doesn't matter. It's just looking for sales within that circle, within 3 miles or whatever they want to use. But it's not. RPR can do a lot of really good things, and I like it. But you have to be careful. You need to select the comps. But I don't understand why that's not part of pre-licensing.
Well, let's see. Bill Aceto from Boone in North Carolina is the incoming chair of the Real Estate Commission. So I reckon we can tag Bill in this episode and he can have a look at it. I'm sure he'll be very excited to have an opportunity to look at that because it is an important part of the practice of real estate. And to your point, if a realtor is responsible for it, we should be doing everything we can to get them well trained on it to protect the public, because that's the point of having a license in the first place.
And I actually think to be a realtor these days, you just about need an attorney's license. You got so many things to be responsible for. Why would you be responsible for square footage?
It's a good point, but I don't want to be a lawyer, and I like being a realtor, so I don't like that idea, Hamp. But I will say this. I love being a North Carolina realtor because I love having legal hotline as one of my benefits. I have called legal hotline probably more than anybody in the state.
And North Carolina, the best thing they've done, they have the little quarterly thing that goes out. And if you get reprimanded or whatever for square footage or using tax records or whatever, they're going to put your name in that little booklet that goes out.
The bulletin. It's a monthly bulletin that comes out every month. So, yeah.
And nobody wants to see their name in print or their peers to see their name in that book. That's what.
And for the record, I do think every state should have a published disciplinary actions like North Carolina does. I think it is smart that the other licensees know what's being policed so they can straighten up if they've gotten sideways themselves. But to those out there who don't know what Hamp was meaning with RPR, if somebody is a realtor, not just a licensee, they have access to this amazing tool called the Realtors Property Resource. And frankly, I think that's worth the cost of admission on my membership just by itself. And it is a tool that does not replace the realtor, and a good realtor is going to put the correct information into it so that it's very usable, and others are slightly on the lazy side. So this is why if you're a member of the public who happened to land on this episode and you're thinking about selling your house, as you build your interview list out, you should be asking the person you're interviewing, how do they arrive at the price? And if they say they calculate dollars per square, you need to ask some questions, because that's somebody who's not looking at the big picture, which is the biggest part of our role in consumer protection. Is how do we work with our appraiser brothers and sisters, and how do we go to educational pieces, and what are we doing to make sure that we have a full picture? Because that's what the two of y'all are doing with your service. You're helping the everyday realtor provide a better picture of the property so that the seller is educated and the buyer is as well.
Yeah.
Bill, you want to tell a little about the class?
Yeah. So what we're doing, actually, to piggyback on that, actually what we're doing is, we're creating a class where we're going to go through the process of getting it approved for CE, where you can actually take the class, you learn about measuring, you learn how to use these apps. So like we mentioned before, and you can actually do the floor plans. So if you're either a buyer agent or a listing agent, you've got that knowledge, and you've got this tool that you can use, whether you're working with a buyer to make sure. So if you've got a listing that doesn't have a floor plan, you can do it yourself. If you've got a new construction, this is what I really harp on with buyer agents that are doing new construction, is pull out your phone, use the app, check the square footage before, so you know. And then, of course, a listing agent you could do your own measuring and make sure. The big thing is, a lot of agents won't do it, but they will have the education and knowledge. So when that person you hire gives it to you, you will have the knowledge where you can say, hey, this is right or not. And I want to piggyback too on this and talk about, when you're hiring people to do your measuring, your person who's selling the house, ask your agent to say, how are you going to measure this house? What technology, doing it by hand, whatever. You need to be asking these questions. And two, as a realtor, if you're hiring people, is what is your training? What's your qualifications? Are you a home measuring specialist? Ask these questions to vendors that you are, going to be hiring to do this, so that you don't get stuck where you're having to give up your commission, or you're ending up in the North Carolina Bulletin that month where you're getting reprimanded or even losing your license. Luckily last month, no one lost their license. I was so happy to see that. So there was a streak there for like 6 months where people getting reprimanded and losing their license. But, always ask these questions and say, look, how are you doing? How are you coming about this? And read it. Don't just take it, bring the salt and throw it out there. Don't do that.
North Carolina, whatever. Yeah, but it's getting easier to use that software all the time. Before, I was kidding about realtors having so many things to be responsible for that they should hire somebody to measure it. But even appraisers, they're not trained. We get 3 paragraphs, and then 20 people measured one house, and we all pulled the tape one time. And then we were square footage experts. Appraisers.
That's it.
That's it.
I didn't know that in appraiser world, they'd take 20 people to one house and pull the tape.
Kind of like realtors we did years ago.
Your supervisor will teach you as you're going. But when you get an appraiser's license, you need at least a couple of years under somebody to understand that. And another one of my pet peeves is, what do we call the square footage? In MLS, there's over 50 different names for heated living area. Same thing in tax records. So why can't we have, I call it the McDonald's menu. Everybody recognizes that menu and they know what it is. Mm-hmm. And let's just say if somebody was smart enough to put Realtor.com with the square footage information, there needs to be one menu. Let's all call finished living area or whatever, heated living area, whatever it is. But we all need to use the same menu. So when somebody searches square footage, you'll get the same results on there.
Yeah, there's not a standard. That's the thing. There needs to be a national standard, and that's where uniformity. That's where NAR needs to come in, and
Does
like
ANSI
you said.
not have that? I thought ANSI had the standards.
No, they have a standard. It's nothing to do. That's reporting the square footage.
Oh, but it's not the vocabulary.
A different animal. No.
That seems like an approach that could be taken. Now, I think NAR should be out of the MLS business altogether because they've done nothing but cause headaches and heartaches. But the home builders could drive that point home, I would think, through
Well,
ANSI if they wanted to
the
take it.
home builders, they update ANSI about every 10 years,
Oh,
and
that's
they don't put a lot of appraisers on the committee to make changes. We had 42 people write into them asking for a change on slope ceilings. There's too much confusion about that. And they wouldn't make the change. But you have to understand they're looking at it for their purposes, not for realtors and appraisers.
Yeah.
Well, now, what change were they looking for on the slope ceilings, Ham? Something different than the 7-foot break point
Well,
that counts as
the
the
part
period?
like where you get to 5 feet, do you add for the width of the exterior wall or do you not? On the lower level, you add for exterior walls. But when you stop at 5 feet, all they have to do is say, yes, stop at the 5 foot point or stop at the 5 foot point and add for the exterior wall. And they wouldn't add a comment. All they got to do is say yes or no, but they wouldn't give us that.
By the way, if you're a regular person and you want to know what a slope ceiling is, think about a bonus room over a garage that's got these angled ceilings, or an A-frame house. Think about those old A-frame Swiss ski chalet looking properties. The living area is fine in the main area, but as you get over towards the edge of the angle, the walls get short and there's not but so much you can do unless you are a person of short stature like my cousin Alicia. She could fit in any of these spaces at 4'9". So, but the normal 6-foot person can't do a whole lot with it. And if it doesn't sound important to you, you should know that all of this, that stuff that sounds really small, impacts how you use a property, and it impacts the value based on how you use it. And the value is what an appraiser brings to us, that certified opinion of value, because I believe in certified residential appraisers, because I think that's a step above somebody who did not go through the certification process. Just like I believe in realtors versus licensees. They can do the job, but do you want both of them? I want somebody that's committed to their craft. So when we look at the future and you're talking about all this other technology, do you think we lose any of the ability of somebody to understand a property when everything goes to electronics? When you talk about 4D, is that going to eliminate more human error? Is that like a 4D ultrasound where you'll be able to measure it and look at it in dollhouse form like Matterport? What does that even mean?
Well, I think it's going to make it a lot easier with the technology for measuring. I mean, actually, I took a class with Hamp. We did. Remember that we had that Fannie Mae guy in there. They're talking about going to cubic feet, to measuring in cubic feet instead of doing square
No,
feet.
that's not going to work, Bill. That's not going to work.
But the thing is that when you've got all this technology, it makes it a whole lot easier. Where, I mean, already now you've got 3D programs like Matterport and a few other ones out there that are measuring iGuide. I mean, it'll measure everything. I mean, it is an amazing tool. But yeah, I think that's where we're going, is where we're measuring the whole house instead of just square foot. We're going to go eventually to cubic feet, because it costs more to build a house that's like this than a house that's like this. So, you're getting true value of that when you're measuring the entire interior of the property.
You're going to have to re-educate a whole profession to go from square footage to cubic footage.
Well, that's what we're doing this now. I'm hoping down the road that we'll get to that. Hamp and I are putting this class together. We're starting with this here, and hopefully down the road, when things start working and all this new technology, 4D imaging, radar, and all this stuff comes out, we can upscale this. But we've got to start somewhere. But agents need to get educated on this stuff. They need to understand square footage, price per square foot. They need to understand floor plans. They need to be using floor plans. Use floor plans with every listing. People look for this stuff. But understanding
the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid.
That's why I'm worried about cubic footage, Hamp. And that's not keeping it simple.
How are we going to train everybody? I mean, the agents, the appraisers, that'll be a nightmare. But we've told them, and
Right.
They don't want to listen. So it's going to get interesting, but we're going to try to make a class that'll make it as simple as possible. We're going to have a big red easy button. Say, you can do this.
Yeah, yeah. Have webinars and stuff like that for agents to go in. They can log in and watch this stuff. And those who are truly professionals who want to be experts in their field, they're going to see this. They're going to want this. And those, people will continue doing whatever they want to, but the true professionals in this business, they're going to be paying attention to this, and they're going to be knowledgeable, and they're not going to be the ones that wind up in the bulletin on that month with losing their license for measuring. It is so easy. I say don't
do it. They just need to understand.
Well, yeah. I mean, the big thing is understanding and don't. Either do it. Hire somebody to do it. Understand what they're doing. Understand the reports, or learn to do it yourself. It's really simple. The technology's there, y'all. It's so easy. I mean, it's very inexpensive, and you hire somebody to do it. It's very inexpensive. I mean,
photography they're hand in hand now.
Yeah. Photography, it goes hand in hand. Yeah. So your photographers definitely should be offering floor plan and know how to do it and understand, how this stuff works. If they don't, then it's best to get somebody else. So
I'll just point out that even those of us that would not want to go to cubic square footage, we would do it anyway, begrudgingly, because we'll stay at the front of it. But my question is this: do y'all know if any other states have started making moves from traditional heated living area square footage to this volume number of cubic square footage or cubic footage?
No. This is the thing they were talking about.
So North Carolina and South Carolina might be at the front edge of it if y'all keep driving the train.
Well, the idea is to prepare, is to get ready to understand the square footage part. And so the other stuff, if it's launched, this was a conversation that the Fannie Mae representative was having. But I don't know if anybody is using. I know other people, other states that are actually, their MLSs have jumped on and said every listing will have a floor plan now. New Mexico, Arizona, there's a few of those guys out there who've jumped on board and said MLSs.
44 MLS systems that require a floor plan now. That's a lot.
That is. That's the benefit of winning that lawsuit that was filed in Missouri. If y'all were watching that one, where the guy who had originally drawn the floor plan sued the realtor for publishing the floor plan without his permission, even though it was attached to the house, because he said he owned the plan and it shouldn't be used in marketing. And he lost that one because obviously the floor plan is the house that he built, and that person who lives in it can publish their floor plan. But since that went down in flames, thank heavens, there are more people out there that are publishing these, because it's good for the consumer. I don't see how cubic is going to be good for the consumer, because that's crazy. Although
we're going to make this class to show them why that's not going to work.
But I guess it would tell me the difference in 8-foot ceilings versus 10-foot ceilings without knowing what the ceiling height is. But oh my gracious, I'm going to have to learn new things again. Oh.
Yeah, I'm already measuring ceiling height. People want this. They're like, hey, tell me what the ceiling height each area. So I'm already measuring these big houses.
Homeowner doesn't care.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say this: if it's got popcorn ceilings, y'all, if you take the popcorn off, it will visually raise your ceilings by 6 inches right away. So you get the popcorn.
You've got a 6'10" ceiling. You remove the popcorn. Absolutely.
It's wild what a difference that makes. But I'll just point out too, a lot of the popcorn does have some traces of asbestos in it, and so you should be thoughtful about all of that when you are removing popcorn. I feel obligated to add that in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So from a different perspective, actually, I should probably add in too, when we talk about measuring, this is a good reason. If you are a real estate professional watching this episode, that's the reason you should have AFLAC or some other short-term insurance, because so many agents have broken ankles and legs measuring the house because they step off the porch or step over into a hole somewhere where they're pulling the tape. So short-term
up north in the snow and whatever.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's what Yankees have to deal with. We don't have to deal with that here, but we do have probably more mosquitoes than they do. So I just point out short-term insurance, very important for self-employed professionals. So back to the fact that y'all have, Bill, you've been practicing real estate a long time. You've been supporting realtors a long time. Hamp, you've been a licensed appraiser and a realtor for all these years. What is the one thing that you wish the public would ask their realtor that they don't ask, and then they get tangled up with somebody who's not probably as professional as they should be? What do you wish the public would ask on that interview?
Go ahead, Hamp.
Thanks, Bill.
I've got my answer. Do you want me to do it first?
That
Yeah,
was
you
well
go
played,
first.
Bill.
You
Well
got
played.
That is a great question, and I'm going to tell you this. A lot of agents don't want to hear it. Is I would like to hear the seller say, "This is the largest investment that I'll probably have in my life. How are you going to market my house? Show me what you're going to do to market my house to stand above all the other properties out there and all the other realtors. You know, are you doing professional photography? Are you doing floor plans? Are you doing 3D? Are you doing aerial? Are you doing video?" Ask these questions. So when you're comparing agents with each other, the number one reason that they hire you is to market their property and get it sold. Each agent should do their due diligence, and they should provide a great marketing plan and a products to give the most exposure to that property. And some agents don't want to do it. A lot of agents do, but I wish they would ask that as, what are you going to do to market my property? And how are you going to do it?
And if the answer is stick it in the MLS, that is not a sufficient answer.
Or
And
use cell phones. No,
can we
don't.
please stop with the cell phone photos? I don't care what kind of nice Samsung Droid fancy camera you
Yeah.
have. It's not the same thing as a pro. I mean, we should be past that at this point. We still dealing with that.
It should be required by every broker in charge out there should be requiring their agents to use professional photography, floor plans, it presents the image of your firm, and
Agreed.
it reflects on you as a broker in charge, as you as the agent, as you as the company. You know, you should be using professional tools, professionals to do that. You are professional. You should be hiring professionals.
Exactly. And I'll follow up with hiring professionals. You need to reward the people that have spent the time to put those little letters at the end of their name. You know, that costs money, time. You know, a CRS was the best thing I ever did. I learned more in that than anything else.
Yep.
GRI and even, let's see, what is it, PSA? I think I took that one, the pricing strategy, and they talked about square footage, but they never talked about where you get it from, or never really the direction of comp. I took that class just to see what they would do about comps and square footage, and they taught nothing about it. But the people who get those letters, they're normally your top producers and the people that have the most knowledge, and that's who you should want working for you.
That's a great point, because a lot of agents that will go pursue those letters don't know what to do with it after they get it. But to the consumer, it almost doesn't matter which ones they have. If they have letters, they've gone above and beyond their peers to continue learning about their craft. And in any class, even if it's missing information or it's got a terrible instructor, there is always something you can grab out of it that will benefit the consumer. And to that point, Hamp, I always love realtors that are committed to the business, and that shows me that they are committed to this and they're running a business as opposed to just getting a license and grabbing a deal here or
Putting
there.
it in the MLS. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
sadly, they can.
They want to look at pretty houses all day. They just want to sign up, put it in MLS. Oh, I love to sell real estate and look at pretty houses all day.
Well, that's the proof they weren't into business during the Great Recession, because we didn't have that many pretty houses to look at then. There were a lot of houses that required you to wash your hands afterwards.
Yeah. And then COVID doing appraisals, you know, you had to be Johnny Rocket going through the house, got your mask on. It was not a good time.
Yeah.
Well, now hopefully we've learned some things since that era about good practices and who the experts actually are, which is actually us, the people. As it turns out, we know lots of great things. All right. So as y'all look at the practice of real estate and what's changed in an area, I gotta circle back to what you slipped out at the intro there, Hamp, where so many of our communities are losing their personality. And it's something I think is getting louder and louder in North Carolina and in South Carolina, because there's been such an influx of people coming here, because obviously we have the jobs, we have a great climate, we got the mountains and the beach and the lakes and wonderful people. But when all the people come in from other places, it's very hard for the personality and the quirks that make Moore County special to keep Moore County different than Cabarrus County. And I love that. So what do you think the future looks like as we continue to manage this influx?
Yeah, and I think we're kind of past the point of managing it. It's I don't know that there's anything we can do about it, because we've gone from the kind of rural country feeling, and it's already gone to suburban, and we're becoming more like a city all the time. And I don't believe we can get it back. And the mix of people, sometimes that creates a lot of clashes.
It does.
Whether it's politics or anything else, it makes for interesting life, but it's not so good sometimes. I wish I had an answer to that we could work better together. But I will say appraisers need to go and speak to agents more. We all have the same, we're trying to get that sale to go through and be as fair to the consumers as we can. So get together and talk. There shouldn't be any secrets between us. I wrote a class one time called Agents Are from Mars or Appraisers Are from Venus, and a lot of times we are. So we need to talk more.
Yeah.
I love that more than I should, because that's hilarious. And if you're a young person watching the show, that was a whole thing, 35 years ago, that book came out. Go look up Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and you know what the War of the Sexes looked like in the 90s, I guess. Oh, but you know what? To that point, realtors also need to talk to appraisers more. This has got to be a two-way street, because I get a little tired of realtors that trash talk appraisers online and on Facebook and complain because the value didn't match, but they didn't provide good data to the appraiser. They didn't return the phone call, and they've forgotten that a lot of our appraisers are realtor members, and they're out here violating the code of ethics, trash talking them. So it's got to be both ways. But we have a goal in focus, which is what you just said, Hamp. We want the buyer to get the house they want, and we want the seller to get sold. And this is not about collusion or about putting anybody's numbers in place or trying to work the system. It's about, if somebody has questions, there should be answers so that we can move forward, and it's got to be a better partnership. So I'm glad you brought that up, but my side has to work harder to bring the appraisers the information they were looking for.
We can talk to each other. I don't know why people think they can't talk to appraisers. They still do sometimes.
Well, the information around the HVCC was a lot of bad information. In 2009, y'all, that was probably one of the worst pieces of legislation I've seen in my lifetime, the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, where they tried to blame the mortgage fraud and the straw buyers and the recession on appraisers, which was just total fabrication to protect the big banks. But the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, a lot of agents took that to mean they can't talk to appraisers at all. You can answer their questions. Now, you can't influence them, because you do have a vested interest in the transaction, and you can't tell them what their job looks like, but you can answer their questions. It's so often we see bad legislation that's poorly interpreted, and then this goes back to education, and we didn't see a lot of good information that protected the agents to talk to the appraisers. I tell mine all the time, your job as the agent is to defend the value to the appraiser. And if you did your homework listing the house,
show them the comps that you use. Yeah. It's math,
Here's my measure. Here's my
We all have the same MLS. Even though I know I heard on one of your shows about the books and going to the 1 hour photo. And I used to take appraisals down to the bank. And, those people were our friends. And I miss that when we can't go to the banks anymore.
Well, I still go to mine. I love my tellers. I know all three of them, but I'm always the only one in the lobby when I go in, because everybody else is out there at the machine with the boop, boop, boops. And I like to say hey to the humans.
Yeah, my banker's glad when I leave, because I like to go in and chat with them and stuff. They're like, God, thank God he's gone.
They
Really
don't
don't
have
know
to
it's real.
chat
We're busy.
anymore.
Well, I want to say this one thing too about the measurements. One thing is realtors, you know, you look at your numbers, your comps, and you talk about appraisals coming back, they're not right or whatever. The one thing that Hamp and I too focus on is, if you put junk into the MLS, you get junk out. So that's one thing too about the using proper measurements. If you want better CMAs, if you want better appraisals, I highly recommend stop
Better.
using tax records. Stop using the previous agent's listing or information, MLS square footage information. Stop using builder, square footage. Please don't use Zillow. It is the worst measurement. Don't use those. But do the work. I mean, do your due diligence. Get the house measured every time to make sure, because it's a material fact. You're responsible for it. If you look at November 23, that article that came out, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission states in there that it's the broker in charge and the broker responsibility for the measurements if you use them. But understand it doesn't have to be perfect. You got that 5% window of deviation there. But if you want better comps, you want better appraisals, put better information in your MLSs. And your MLSs should be requiring this. Your BICs, your MLSs, your board should be requiring that this be done right so you can get better information.
And let's briefly touch on that variation real quick, because a lot of agents may not know that. And by the way, that's a North Carolina number, South Carolina as well, but your state may be different. So in our states, there's an allowable 5% variance on the published square footage, and it's because of what Hamp said a little while back. If you have different people measuring the property, you're going to come up with a different number, and that's based on how people measure it. It is based on things like 2-story spaces and cantilevers, and did they pull from the outside or the inside? So you're going to see a little variance. And because you may have a variance, our state regulations understand that it's not an exact science. However, if you're off by 15%, well, now you're going to have a buyer that's very hot under the collar, because they then feel they overpaid for the property, even if they liked it, even if it fits their furniture, even if it's a great house. If the numbers don't match, suddenly they want a refund. So you've got to be very aware of what the regulations are in your area. And if you're a home seller, frankly, you should be asking this kind of question of your agents. Go ahead and quiz people. How much do they know about their own profession? You could uncover very quickly the people that are dialed into the business versus the ones that are selling one house every 3 years by accident and aren't really paying attention. They might be very kind and thoughtful people, but if you sell one house every 3 years, you're just not going to have the same level of knowledge and muscle memory that others do.
And ANSI requires you now. The main thing is that someone else could take your sketch and recreate your measurements.
That's
And
a good rule of thumb.
with Fannie and Freddie, you have to show your measurements. So they could send your appraisal to somebody else and they will go and follow your measurements. And if they come up with a different number, you got a problem. That's good.
Yeah.
So what is big data? There's only 3 sources of data.
Google.
From MLS, it comes from tax records, or it comes from appraisers, like the file that Fannie and Freddie had, that big database. But I mean, that's what big data is. So that information is huge, and whoever controls square footage controls the future real estate information. That's my pet pitch.
Well, I think that's actually it in a nutshell. Whoever controls the square footage is controlling the valuation data. You're 100% right. That might be the title of our episode, actually. Who owns the data? He who holds the square footage. Bill, did you wrangle him in just for that one little pearl for us there?
I did. He's pretty cheap. I only had to pay him $1, so he's pretty good.
He's going to pay $1.50 now because he's got a plan for that 50th wedding anniversary in 4 years, and his
That's
bride
right.
expects something nice.
No, I tried to get him to go to lunch last time. He wouldn't go, but I'm going to try to round him up for Friday. Maybe we can go to lunch.
Well, you should go to the Chick-fil-A in Aberdeen. That's where my aunt and uncle, God love them, they lived in Aberdeen. They've passed now, but that was where they used to go for lunch, and they would share a cup of chicken soup at the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I'm not sharing any soup with you, Hamp. It's all mine, man.
We eat Chick-fil-A a lot.
I mean,
like
it is the Lord's chicken, but they're going to have to fix that recipe since it's not very maha right now.
I love the grilled chicken. That's my favorite. So.
Well, I really appreciate y'all coming on to give us a little perspective on measuring and on professionalism in the business and appraisals. And we've gone in about a dozen different directions. So how does a realtor or a consumer reach either one of you if they want to talk more about this very interesting rabbit hole that we've been down today?
And you can get me at pinehurstappraiser@gmail.com or 910-603-2690.
Yeah, and you can reach me at rawtaperpm.com. And I've already got some phone calls from people in the last show. But yeah, if you got questions, give me a call. I'd be glad to talk to you about it. But my phone number is 803-412-8209. And you can reach me at info@rawtaperpm.com.
And if you're not in North or South Carolina and you need to find out who in your state is a good resource similar to Bill and Hamp, just reach out to them. I guarantee that they will tap into their network and help you get better information to provide a better consumer experience in real estate. Guys, I appreciate you so much for coming on the show and for all that you're doing.
Love the new title. Good luck.
And Hamp, when I figure out how we're related, because I'm pretty sure we are, I will let you know, and then we'll have a genealogy episode.
Hey, Leigh, did you drink your wine yet that I sent you?
Well, I did not drink it yet, but my mother's going to help me with it because she's the wine drinker. And so on Sundays when I fix supper, we share, and it's on our list for August. So we have a rotation.
Okay, well, let me know. It's an acquired taste. It's a different.
Do what, Hamp?
Do you still get to have supper with your mother every week?
I'm the luckiest ever. I cook for my mom and dad on Sunday evenings, and so that's our Sunday tradition. And my dad does not need to have any adult beverages, but my mother feels like she's earned one after caretaking my dad all week. And so I take care of her on Sundays, and I will take those Sunday evenings as long as I have them. And for anybody out there, if you still have your mom and dad, I don't care if you get along with them or not. You need to call them and see them while you got them.
That's a gift.
That's good. Yeah. So, well,
and
cool.
Don't worry, Hamp. I'll ask him if he knows how we're kin because, my grandparents on his side, they were cousins because the Edwardses married the Thomases. And so all the Edwardses down there
everybody
in your area, they're all kin from way back then. So I'll find out and report back.
Okay, sounds good. I'll leave you with my favorite life saying. If money can fix it, it ain't broke.
Oh. I like that.
He's full of wisdom.
Just let it go, right?
He's full. I can't do better than that. He's the man. Mr. ANSI, he's the man.
All right, guys, please make sure and reach out to these gentlemen. Their information is in the show notes for this episode. Hit the bell to subscribe. Leave a nice little note in the comments, especially if you got something useful out of this conversation. And most importantly, come see us next time on Real Talk with Leigh Brown.
Ooh, if that doesn't give you a new perspective on real estate or at least make you laugh out loud, you need to check your pulse, friends. Now listen, if you loved what you heard, go ahead and click the subscribe button, hit the bell if you're on YouTube, follow on that favorite podcast app, and pretty please leave me a 5-star review, not just for me, although I do totally love the affirmation, but because it helps other people find the truth behind the real estate curtain too. And hey, if you've got a wild story of your own or something burning you want to learn about in real estate, you can slide into my DMs, as the young folks say, or shoot me a message. Maybe you can be the next guest on Real Talk with Leigh Brown. If you keep showing up, I'll keep bringing the chaos, the coaching, and the crazy stuff we all love in real estate. I'll see you next time, friends. And remember, real estate ain't always pretty, but it's never boring.